Embrace the chaos.
Moon Knight follows Stephen Grant, a mild-mannered gift shop employee who becomes plagued by blackouts and memories of another life, at which point he learns that he has dissociative identity disorder and shares a body with a mercenary named Mark Spector. And that is the official synopsis from Marvel, because I'm not smart enough to think of my own. This will be a spoiler review. If you have not seen all of Moon Knight, I will be spoiling it from episodes 1 through 6, the entire show. I do have non-spoiler thoughts in my individual episode recaps. I'll link that playlist, so if you want to just watch my review of a specific episode and hear my thoughts, go ahead and do that. I divide those in half, so the front bit of the video I talk non-spoilers, then I get into spoilers. So only watch this if you are completely caught up on Moon Knight, because I will be spoiling everything. The MCU Disney Plus shows have just not been that great. WandaVision was amazing until it absolutely fumbled its finale. What If is the only show I've ever seen that had both a 10 out of 10 episode and a 1 out of 10 episode in the same season. Falcon the Winter Soldier and Hawkeye would have been better as movies, and you know what? I liked Loki, so it's excluded from this. But still, the bar wasn't that high. So going into Moon Knight, my excitement was kept in check. So imagine my surprise when this show ended up being one of the greatest things to come out of the MCU. The character of Moon Knight is played by Oscar Isaac, and if there is one thing I knew would be good in this show, it would be Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac has been a part of 2 franchises. He was Apocalypse, he hated doing that, and he was Poe Dameron, and he probably even more famously hated doing that. But then, when Kevin Feige and Marvel pitched him Moon Knight, he said yes. And so, yeah, that definitely didn't help keep my expectations in check, because I was like, this has to be really good for Oscar Isaac to do it. Then I heard Ethan Hawke was on board, and the trailer came out, and the poster came out, and the image of Mr. Knight came out, and we learned that the episodes were going to be 50 minutes long instead of half an hour. And yeah, then keeping my expectations in check went out the window. Oscar Isaac has to play a lot of different roles in this. He plays Stephen Grant, who's a British gift shop employee, and real quick, let's talk about his British accent. I'm not British, so I can't say anything about it. I've heard a lot of people say it's not great. To those people, I would like to point out, Mark Spector's an American dude, and Stephen Grant is him manifesting an accent. Of course it's not great, he's not a British guy. And then on the other end of that spectrum, he has to play Mark Spector, who is a badass mercenary known as Moon Knight. And he has a cool suit, and it's like a mummy, he gets wrapped in his suit. It's badass. Now the reason he has to play multiple different characters is because he has DID, that means dissociative identity disorder. I'm not going to get too deep into the details of that because I don't want to screw it up, because I would feel really bad if I gave false information about DID. But essentially, he's got 2 different personalities. The main 2 that we follow in the show are Mark Spector, who is Moon Knight, and Stephen Grant, who becomes Mr. Knight, and a third one named Jake Lockley is teased, but we do not see him until the very end of the show. And throughout this show, this man gives an Emmy-worthy performance. I know award shows are like kind of bullshit, but if he is not getting an Emmy nomination for this show, I'm going to burn the Academy to the ground. This is the best performance to come out of the MCU. This is a better performance than most of the shit that gets nominated every year. Not only does he have 2 completely different accents, but he has to play the character in 2 completely different ways, and oftentimes he switches from Steven to Mark or Mark to Steven in the same shot, and it feels like such a different character even though you're still watching Oscar Isaac. There's this part he does it in like episode 4, 5, and again in 6. He'll start out as Mark and switch to Steven, and you forget that you're watching the same actor. They're 2 completely different people. But Oscar Isaac's not the only great performer in the show. Ethan Hawke is here as the villain of Arthur Harrow, who I actually did really dig as a villain. His best scene in the entire show, he has a great performance throughout it, but his best scene in the entire show is the scene when they free Amit, and Amit says his scales are unbalanced, and he's like, okay, then kill me if you have to. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, this dude isn't a pawn. He firmly believes this is right. He's like, if I have to die for you, awesome, I'll do it. He actually believes in it. We need more villains who are like that. Arthur Harrow kind of reminds me of Kingpin. I feel like there's this element where he knows he's the bad guy, but he just firmly believes in what he's doing to the point that he's accepted that. He's like, if you want to kill me, fine, kill me. And his whole shtick is that Moon Knight and Khonshu only punish people who've already done bad, whereas he and Amit punish people that are going to do bad before they can do it. It's some really messed up logic. He kills a lot of people. And the character I thought I would hate that I ended up loving was Layla. And the reason I say that is that usually in these shows, there's a character I couldn't care less about, and I'm like, we have to see that. Like, at some point we gotta get to the character I hate, and I figured it would be Layla. But to my surprise, she was the biggest surprise of the show. She is played brilliantly once again by May Calamawy. There is not a single weak link in this cast. They got 3 amazing performers to do these lead characters. She does not have nearly as much screen time as the other 2, but when she is on screen, it's compelling, and her best moments are definitely in the couple final episodes. Episode 4, she had that scene where she got pissed at Mark for killing her dad, and just the rage in her eyes, I got chills. And then again in the last episode when she becomes a superhero, because she does, and there's this great moment of a kid saying, are you an Egyptian superhero? And she says, yes, I am. I'm like, damn right you are. And for some reason, there's the very vocal minority online who's like, her accent's dumb. She needs to pick an accent. I can't tell what her accent is. Lesson for you dipshits. She is a Bahraini-born Egyptian-Palestinian actress. That's her normal accent. The story of Moon Knight's the coolest thing I've seen in a while. The show is divided into sort of chunks, I would say. The first 2 episodes are sort of their own story, and then 3 and 4 become another story, and then 5 is another story, and then 6 is another story as well, but they still all have an overarching narrative to tie them together so they don't feel disjointed, as a TV show should be. So, the first couple episodes, you follow Stephen Grant, who is not the main personality. I thought this was genius. Mark Spector's the main guy, but the show makes you follow a different personality and get to love him before they introduce the main guy to you, like, fully. So the first couple episodes follow him. He's just, he's living his life. Works at a museum gift shop. He loves Egyptology. He loves it. It's so cool. Everyone goes through an ancient Egypt phase. So, and mine was very recent. So it's cool to watch him and be like, yo, Steven, I can relate to that. And he believes that he has a sleeping disorder that really causes him to sleepwalk, and he'll wake up in places he has no idea how he got there. He tapes his door shut, he puts sand around his bed to check for footprints, and he chains himself to his bed. All sort of hints to see where he might have gone in the middle of the night, and he'll often wake up in all these weird sort of places after some big event happened, and it's all hints. Moon Knight's coming. And then at the end of episode 1, we do see him, and then episode 2 and further on teaches us Mark Spector is the actual personality, Stephen Grant is a manifestation of Mark's mind, and Mark Spector kicks ass in a superhero suit. The marketing for the show made it out like it was going to be bloody and brutal, and even before they started marketing it, people got it in their heads for some reason that this show was going to be like Daredevil, that we were going to have Daredevil-level choreography, we were going to have Daredevil-level themes, which we do, and I'll get to, and that for some reason it would be on par with that show, which it is in certain aspects. I think some of the writing in this show is the best writing Marvel's had since Daredevil, which is awesome. Daredevil is my favorite show of all time, so to see something with that level of writing again makes me so happy. But on the other hand, I think people did get a little delusional where they're like, we were promised Daredevil level choreography. No, you weren't. They never said you would have that. You just got that in your head. And there aren't a lot of fights in the show. There's a very, very short fight in episode 1, and by that I mean it's just a massive beatdown, and then the episode ends. Episode 2 is pretty similar. 3 does have a bit of action, and then there's like no action until the end fight in episode 6. So many people hate that there's not a lot of Moon Knight action, because that does take the back seat to the Mark and Steven character drama that they're going for with this show. And so the people that complain that this show's not about Moon Knight are objectively wrong. It's like Iron Man 3 all over again. And 2, if you stopped complaining for 4 seconds and sat back and just watched the story they were telling, you would probably love it as much as everyone else does. This show had the strongest start to any Marvel show. I don't just mean the Disney Plus shows. I mean any of the Marvel shows. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Punisher, WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Loki. None of it even comes remotely close to Moon Knight's first episode. This is the best pilot episode. Not the best episode, period. The best pilot episode of a Marvel show that I've seen since Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It is exciting from the first second to the last second when Moon Knight comes out and beats that werewolf into the tile. That dude becomes Flat Stanley. And I did not think anything would be able to beat that episode, but I was wrong. But episode 2 was not the episode that did it. I like episode 2, don't get me wrong. There's not a bad episode of this show. It's just when you have an episode that good, the chances of the episode after it not being as good are very high. That happened in this, but it's still a good episode. My one little complaint about episode 2 is it seems like it answers a bit too much. It pulls the curtain back a bit too far, which I did not like at first, and I thought it was actually going to be a big ding for this show and bring it down a couple points, but it wasn't, because now that I've seen the entire show, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to connect it, and I'm like, that's what you were going for, that's how all that ties up. Cool, so I'm basically forgiven episode 2 at this point. And how could I not like episode 2 when it introduces Mr. Knight? I know a lot of Moon Knight comic readers do not like what they did to Mr. Knight in this show. As someone who has only read one comic with Mr. Knight where he was a supporting character, I loved this guy. Episode 3 is an episode I liked more than pretty much everyone else, it seems. To me, this episode is a perfect blend of spices. It has a bit of everything that you like. We got some great action with Moon Knight, some great stuff with Mr. Knight, as well as just Steven and Mark. Layla really gets to be even more prominent than she was in episode 2, and there's like a cool bond between Layla and Mark. We get more Mark Spector as opposed to Steven Grant in the first 2 episodes. We get an awesome action scene, and we get this beautiful ending with Khonshu, who is voiced wonderfully by F. Murray Abraham, because there's not a weak link on this show where he has to turn back the sky to a certain time period so they can match this constellation, and the gods are encasing him in stone while he's doing it, so he's losing his power, and Steven is on the ground in the Mr. Knight suit, maskless, looking like a goat, and he's doing everything he can to not let the sky go until they get the constellation. Then he loses his powers, and then people started to hate the show because he didn't have his powers in episodes 4 or 5. Because in episodes 4 and 5 are whack. They are also the episodes where Mark and Steven are just straight up dead. Because Harrow shoots Mark halfway through episode 4. And then we spend like 17 minutes in the psych ward. And then there's a hippo. And the greatest ending to an episode of television I've ever watched.
Hi.
And then episode 5 confirms they're in the afterlife, in the Duat, on their way to the Field of Reeds, but they can't go there unless their souls balance to the scale, and it just keeps doing this. And so to balance it, Mark and Steven basically have to plunge into their past and be open with each other and learn everything there is to learn. And the 45 minutes that ensue are the best thing Marvel has ever made. Episode 5 is a better version of WandaVision Episode 8, which is an already great episode. It's the origin story episode, which means it's going to be full of heartbreak. Mark Spector and his brother were exploring a cave when it started raining. Mark was told to take care of his brother. Brother drowns. And then Mark and his mom have a very abusive relationship where his mom beats him and hates him and blames him. And there's this one insanely hard scene to watch. I'm actually amazed Disney was like, yeah, let's do this. Because it's brutal. And I would imagine there's some little kids that probably won't vibe with this episode. But there's this scene where he won't let his mom into his room. So she barges in, grabs a belt. She's like, I'm going to teach you to listen or whatever. And Mark, the Oscar Isaac Mark, not little Mark, has to pull Steven away, saying Steven was meant to not see that. Which is literally what Steven was meant for. Steven was meant to kind of be Mark's way to forget about the pain. He would go into Steven at those very big moments of crisis to move past that. And then on the complete opposite end, it's assumed Jake Lockley is probably the guy who is designed to take that pain. And the best scene of the episode, in my opinion, was the switch between Mark and Steven, which is the scene that secured Oscar Isaac his Emmy. This episode alone is Oscar Isaac's, like, he could just make this his resume. He'll just be like, boom, there you go, watch that for 50 minutes. You'll want to cast me in everything. He doesn't want to go to his mom's funeral. He's drinking, he's out in the parking lot, and he has a breakdown. It's rough, man. It is rough. And he's on his knees, he's like punching the ground, he's crying, bawling his eyes out. Boom, switches over to Steven. Steven gets up, he's like, where am I? Picks up his phone, calls his mom, who's having a funeral 3 houses down. It was so incredibly moving, and it was the best performance the MCU has had. Now, the finale of the show is where things get interesting, because people seem to not love the finale. I'm so glad I'm not one of those people. The finale is always the make or break episode of a show. You could take the greatest show on television for 7 years, for example, and you could absolutely botch the last couple episodes, and no one is going to want to rewatch it, and no one's going to want to watch your spin-off prequel show coming out on August 21st of 2022. Or you could be Moon Knight and go 6 for 6. I loved this episode. Was it a bit campy? You bet your balls it was campy. I loved every moment of it. There is a fight scene where you have Moon Knight and Arthur Harrow fighting in the foreground, and in the background you have a giant Khonshu fighting a giant crocodile at the base of the Great Pyramids. What the hell is not to like about that? And my Godzilla vs. Kong loving ass saw this giant kaiju fight about to go down and laid back in my chair and said, oh hell yeah. But beyond that fight, the story of this episode is really cool too. This is Harrow's grand plan. He and Ahmed are about to win. They're just gonna sit there and they're just gonna suck the souls of everyone who's not pure. They're about to have a genocide level event, and they do kill quite a few people. I'm surprised the episode doesn't focus on it that much, but that's something for another time. And then Khonshu comes back. Mark drops just a line I was not ready to hear. I was not mentally or emotionally prepared for that one.
You are the only real superpower I ever had.
And then he comes back to life, the suit wraps back around him, Layla has powers now, and Moon Knight flies to the pyramid like Superman and fights Ethan Hawke on the side of the pyramid. Do I give a shit that it's comics accurate? No! It's good! And that's all that matters! The ending of the show is something people really like to talk about. So, Moon Knight refuses to kill Harrow. A lot of people hate that. They think it's stupid that he will leave an entire trail of bodies but then refuse to kill Harrow. But if you pay attention, what he's actually saying in that moment is he tells Khonshu, it's not about whether or not he should kill the guy. It's about Khonshu. They're talking about Khonshu in this scene. Basically what he's telling Khonshu is, I'm done doing your job for you. If you want this guy dead, do it yourself. Let me be free. That's what he's saying. He's not saying it like, oh, all of a sudden I have good morals. He's saying it as, you're the one who's supposed to be doing this. And that's why Khonshu ends up saying him free. Because they're like, all right, we kept our bargain. Let us go free. He's like, okay, fine. But at the end, they might still have powers. We'll see. Moon Knight's coming back for sure. But then they introduce character in the end credits scene because Harrow's in a hospital and he starts to get wheeled out and everyone in the hospital's dead and he gets in a limo with Khonshu and then he says, let me introduce you to my friend Jake Lockley. And Oscar Isaac turns around and just bam, 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 gone. It's weird though that they put the post-credits scene as a post-credit scene because it's not really it ends the story. Usually, they did this with Far From Home also. It pissed me off. More so with Far From Home than with Moon Knight, where they put the ending of the story as a post-credit scene. A post-credit scene is usually designed to set up the next thing or be a tease, not end the story, but they put it after the credits. It's a nitpick though, I'll get over it. Now, I was annoyed at first that they introduced this very key player at the end of the show in the last 20 seconds, but I started to think about it, it's actually kind of genius. Because now you can go back through all the episodes, even episodes 1 and 2 before they even tease them in episode 3, and you can just find all the little times where Jake Lockley was probably there, and that he was there the entire time. They close it off in a way where if Moon Knight doesn't come back, which they said there's no plans for season 2, I'm going to hold them to that. We're going to see him in a movie probably where they can talk about some of these plot lines, but they leave it in a way where it's a satisfying conclusion to the series, but also open-ended enough where they can continue that story, and I kind of feel like that's a pretty good thing to do with a show. The main storyline, the main plot, that was all resolved. Jake Lockley's not the point of the show. Everything else is Jake Lockley's just a little hint at the end of, yep, I've been here the entire time. Moon Knight is the best Marvel show since Daredevil. The writers knocked it out of the park. The directors knocked it out of the park. Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, May Calamawy, they were all fantastic. We got one of the best performances in the MCU. The action was fun. The story was great. I enjoyed every second of Moon Knight. To the start of the Marvel logo in the first episode, to the ending of the credits in the last episode, Moon Knight abso-fucking-lutely gets an A+. I think Moon Knight's the best thing Marvel has made since Iron Man. I want him to make more stuff like this. Well, what'd you guys think of Moon Knight as well as my review? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's gonna be it. Have a great day, guys.